'cause fishing, it's in my soul.
Welcome to the Salt Strong Podcast, disrupting fishing entertainment as you know it. Prepare to laugh. Prepare to get to know fishing legends in a whole new and unfiltered way. And on occasion, you might even learn a thing or two about fishing. Here's your host, Joe Simons. Like diamonds.
Hello and welcome to the Salt Strong live streaming podcast. My name is Rich Natoli. I'm one of the Salt Strong coaches. I'm joined as often by co-host, the lovely and talented Ed Gobo. Ed, how you doing?
I am riding the struggle bus today, Rich.
I wish I could share everyone the backstage of Ed trying to use a computer. He likes to make fun of me for being old, and I am a lot older than him, but I was in here fine and everything's going good. And Ed, he keeps blinking in and out. He logged on and it was like snow on the screen.
I got a new computer, right? So I haven't gotten it set up. I'm struggling here.
Yes, you are. And I love it. So everybody, apologies. We were a couple of minutes late there, but we are here now. And tonight we are going to be talking about targeting fluke in the backwaters. And it's just going to be Ed and I talking about this one. It's going to be, audience participation. So anybody has anything they want to share, any questions, any comments, make sure you put that into the chat. And speaking of the chat, we've got him, Joe Billups, Crabbing and Fishing, MR Johnson, Participation Trophy Fishing, James Flynn, Norista, Bill Deekhouse, Larry Matzinger, I Feel Fishy, Rob Widmeyer, Pisces Myces, great name, John C., Fish Gum, and there might be more that I haven't seen. If you haven't chatted yet, or if you chatted just seconds ago, I wouldn't see it because we have a very slight delay on our end as Mark Ellinger just comes in at the last second there. So welcome, everyone. Thanks for tuning in. This is going to be just sit down and talk because it is that time of the year, fluke season, as we call it up in the northern part of the mid-Atlantic, and summer flounder and Gulf flounder and southern flounder. They're all the same. They all act the same. You can catch them all the same way. I think a lot of people don't necessarily realize that, but each one of those three species are going to be targeted the same with the same type of an approach. And we're here to talk about that tonight. So, Ed, you were out today on the water. You must have gotten a lot of practice in today, just getting all ready for this episode tonight. So how was today for you?
Again, strong.
And for those on the podcast, Ed just dropped off. He is really struggling, as he was about to say. So I will fill it in for you. Ed had a really tough day. So Ed is fishing out of New Jersey, and the weather, it's just wind. It's just a ton of wind. And when Ed launched, he launched at a bad tide. He left work early to get out on the water. So he launched at a bad tide. He ended up with a 2.5 mile per hour drift. So, anyone who's vertical jigging for fluke know that 2.5 miles per hour is just not going to work. And, he's really struggling with that. And what really made it the worst, and which made him call it after 2 drops, was the snodgrass.
Snodgrass. I'm telling you, man, I'm riding the bus today.
It's okay. It's all right.
Yeah.
All right.
So, launched the same launch that I put out in that video, and I figured it was slack tide by the time I got home. So I'm like, okay, the tide will just start rolling in. Well, it's a spring tide, of course. So I'm fighting the tide out. I got out to the spot I wanted to fish, and it was all snodgrass. So
yeah, I mean, look, I'd like to make fun of you, but it's a tough day, and it's going to be a tough week with these winds along with the spring tides. So, I mean, it's going to be about finding the really good spots that you're going to be able to fish this week. And I'm going to be doing that too. It looks like either Wednesday or Thursday. I got some kayak issues that are being taken care of by Old Town right now that I'm looking for. I can't hit the water until it's taken care of. So I'm waiting for that. I'll fill everyone in on that after everything is fixed, just to give kind of a rundown.
While we're on that topic real quick, if you shake it around, is there something rattling around on the bottom of that?
What are you talking about?
The old drive. You still have the old drive, right?
I still have the old drive. No, Ed, there is no bottom to the drive. The shaft is gone. When I pulled it out of the water, there was just grease pouring out.
Right.
Unfortunately,
So
into the water.
shake when we're done here. Shake it around and see if you hear something rattling, because I think I know what happened.
Oh, yeah, I don't know. I don't think there was anything rattling, but I didn't really check for that. But yeah, I had a catastrophic failure of my drive. And Old Town stepped up big time. It's actually
their warranty, man.
Pretty funny video. Salt Strong Insiders will see it later this week.
Oh, you got it on video too? Nice.
Of course, I got it on video, but it did not stop me from fishing, and I'll use that to kind of roll into my past week. So I had a plan when I went out last time, and it consisted of riding the tides. And I often ride the tide when I'm alone because it's an easier way to go, and I can kind of duck off into the side. Tributaries, less effort, more of a lazy day of fishing, right? So I'm riding the tides. I ride a few miles back into the backwaters. Drive starts to break. So I'm like, all right,
I think you texted me at that point.
I texted you at that point, yes. And I did very little pedaling for the rest of the day. I let the tide, so it made for a long day, right? I let the tide essentially pull me all the way back to the launch, and it actually failed maybe 50 yards. So I only had a 50-yard paddle, but it was by design. I knew that I did not trust that it was going to get me back. So I just kind of drifted around and, had a good day though. But I'll tell you this, what I have found is in the southern part of New Jersey so far this year, the fluke are, man, they're kind of hit or miss. They're there. You're getting the bites, but you're not getting the Nor'easter. I thought only Hobie drives broke. Yeah, this one broke, but Old Town immediately sent out a brand new drive. So I'm just awaiting that, which should be delivered tomorrow. And they're taking the old one back for some quality checks on it. But I'll tell you what, it was rock solid for over 3 years until this happened. And I don't think it's what you think it is, Ed. I think it was just something with the shaft. I think it's just something on the shaft broke.
So it's very possible, but I had an issue. Well, not an issue. I was doing some maintenance on my salty drive, which is the oldest one I have. And it was like as you would pedal, it was like, it sounded like it was almost knocking. And there's a gear on the back side of the prop shaft. So there's a gear where it comes down from where you pedal, and it turns that gear and it mounts to the prop shaft. Well, there's a screw that backs itself out. So if that screw backs out, that pinion gear falls off, and then the prop shaft can slide right out the front, which is, I think, what happened to yours.
That's what it was then, yes, because there was a knock. There was definitely a knock, then a grind. And as soon
the knock backed itself out.
Yeah, the knock I barely noticed. But once I felt it
under hard pedal.
No, it was fine under the hard pedal. It was when I was doing maneuvers, and actually it was when I hit it in reverse, it knocked, and I was like, that's not good.
Okay.
And then I got a little grind when I went forward again, and that's when I stopped. So I did a lot of very, very weak forward pedaling with zero reverse. The first time I hit reverse after that, I lost the entire bottom assembly. So
I think that's exactly what happened.
Yeah, but it was an interesting day. So where I was finding the fish was, this is going to sound weird. It's exactly where I expect to find them at this time of the year, but it's not where I expected to find them this year because the water temperatures are in the low 60s, and I expected that these fish would have moved into the deeper water earlier than they normally do, but they haven't. So I'm catching fish. I'm catching the flounder, the fluke, anywhere from, the deepest is 15 feet, but on average, the fish that I'm catching are going to be between 4 and 8 feet, and probably more in the 4 range. And that means less vertical jigging for me so far this year. I'm doing a lot of cast and retrieve, which is...
I'm wondering if they've always been there.
What's that?
I'm wondering if it's always been like that, and we just jig for them. You know what I mean?
Well,
how many have we passed over in the past? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, but last year we were doing a lot of shallow water stuff. and back in that sound, and we did okay. I know you didn't have a good first day, but we were catching them in 8 to 10 feet of water.
Yeah, but 8 feet that you're jigging, 4 feet you're casting and retrieving.
Yeah, so I was casting and retrieving, and what I was doing is I was going up to the drop-offs. I was casting into 2 feet. I'm jigging back to the boat, and then I'm letting line out, and then I'm letting it drop down the ledge and vertical jigging from 4 feet deeper. So actually, all the fish that I caught were on those drops between 2 feet and about 4 to 6 feet. Not all of them, but the ones that I'm talking about. And they were actually technically on a vertical jig. So, but it's a lot of cast and retrieve, which means a lot of dead grass, snot grass, and everything, fouling everything up. But it's been an interesting start of the year. And then on the flip side, you go to northern New Jersey and they're hammering them left and right. So might have to make a trip up there.
I'm thinking about it.
Yeah. So it was interesting. So Ed, I want to kind of go through this a little bit. First of all, are there any comments that you want to get in here before we roll into this one?
I mean, I don't know what you want to roll into. I do have a couple picked out, so maybe we'll save them for a little later.
Okay, let's just start with this one. It has nothing to do with flounder. Did you see the tiger shark attack on the kayak in Hawaii? Did you see that, Ed?
Yes, them tiger sharks are crazy.
Yeah, I was happy to see he didn't tip over. I don't even think the guy reacted. I mean, that thing came up, took the entire side of the thing in its mouth, including the paddle, and the guy just sat there. The camera didn't jerk. He just kind of looked at it.
I couldn't. I'd probably be in the water with that fish.
Man, it was interesting. I've never had a shark come after the kayak. I've had sharks at the kayak at the stringer, but that's about it. But I've also never had a shark nearly that size. Maybe a 5-footer. It's the biggest. That
was a big shark too.
That was a very big shark. That was at least 7, 9 feet.
I don't know. Yeah, I'd even say bigger.
It might
like how big its head was. Rewatch that video. That thing's head was massive.
Yeah, it definitely had some shoulders on it. Yeah, so I did see that. I saw that a few dozen times. I just, that's not something I look forward to, but we'll see when we go offshore this summer, trying to get out for tuna. But anyway, so let's jump in. Let's talk about fluke. Let's talk about flounder fishing. Let's kind of do this as our true launch to flounder season. So Ed, let's go back to something that I already touched on. What are the types of spots that you're going to be looking for inshore? We're not talking offshore or near shore. We're talking inshore, meaning backwaters. What are you looking for primarily at this time, late May?
Well, that's my homeland. I don't venture, especially in the kayak. I don't venture out past the inlets. So I started fishing the normal haunts, the 8 to 10 foot spots, even working down a little bit deeper. Like the first keeper I got was, he was in like almost 15 feet. So that's where I'm starting. The local spot that I launched, even the one I launched today, it's like 1 to 2 feet. So it's not even, I haven't even tried that depth yet. So,
right.
I'm starting in my normal, like I said, 8 to 10 feet and then working deeper from there. I've only been out 3 times. So
it's been tough to get out, I mean,
for some odd reason, this year has just been like, I'm bombarded with everything between jigs and soccer and baseball. And I just haven't stopped. So
wind.
Yeah.
I mean, the wind has been brutal. Remember we had this beautiful February and everyone's thinking this is going to be the most epic year ever for fishing in the mid-Atlantic. And then March rolls in like on the 1st and it's been nonstop wind. I think the gust for, Wednesday, which is when you want to go and where I would like to go, we're talking gust 26 I saw in your area. And I started looking up and down the coast. So I was like, all right, so if I'm not going to go with Ed, if it's too windy, so where am I going to try to get Ed to go? And I looked all the way up to Jamaica Bay. It's worse. It's 29-degree gusts. This was last night. So I don't know. It could have changed. Looked all the way down to Ocean City, Maryland. and it's pretty much the same. Delaware Bay looks unfishable. It's just not good. So, you know, and I looked on the Chesapeake, so maybe go for striped bass or something. That doesn't look good for a kayak. So it's just
Wednesday's out. I'm looking at it right now.
Yeah,
27 to 20 to 14. So I'm not going to mess with that.
Right. So maybe it's a Thursday for me. I'm going one of these days. So I don't know exactly when, but I'm going. I have to go, but I'm not sure exactly when it's going to be. So I'll have a new drive. So at least I'll be confident when I'm out there. All right. So you're looking for the 8 to 10 feet. I'm personally going to be looking a little bit shallower right now. And a lot of that is because I incorrectly looked at the deeper side of things on the first trip. Actually, I was the pre-fishing kind of ruined me, I think, because I was catching them in 25 feet of water. I was catching keeper, over slots for New Jersey. So over 18 inches, over 20, 22 inches.
I mean, if they were there 2 weeks ago, they're still there.
But they've moved shallow. They're shallower, I think.
So what changed in the last 2 weeks? We haven't gotten really any notable rain or anything like that. That's even touching on Ben's question up here. Salinity levels, water temp, stuff like that. Really hasn't changed, no?
Well, the salinity might, and there are a couple things to keep in mind with salinity. So with a summer flounder, and this is the interesting part. So those of you that are fishing for southern flounder, it's different, and Gulf flounder, it's different. Gulf flounder actually have the highest tolerance for fresh versus salt, so they don't care nearly as much as the other two species about the salinity of the water. So Gulf flounder, you get a ton of rain. It's probably still going to act the same way and be in the same places unless the currents start or the debris in the water start to move it out. A southern flounder is kind of in the middle. So it is kind of sensitive to salinity. But the summer flounder is much more sensitive to the changes in the salinity than either of the other two. So when you have big rains and the water's flowing out of the rivers, you are more likely to see the summer flounder moving towards the inlets, trying to get more salt. They want more salt in that water. They are the least tolerant of lower salinity waters. So keep that in mind if you're fishing the mid-Atlantic and north, where you're not going to have the southern flounder, or if you do, they're just, the rare guest to the area. If it's summer flounder or fluke, you want to go with the higher salinity. So that's where that comes in. As far as the temperatures, I'll tell you what, it's comfortable right now. The temperatures all the way through the Virginia, North Carolina, Virginia, Maryland, Delaware, New Jersey, New York, and I think Connecticut. And quite frankly, I can't say any more because I don't know what it's like in New Hampshire, Rhode Island, Massachusetts. However, they're all within an active range for the summer flounder. So there's no reason that you have to look for them in really deep areas. They don't need a thermocline to sit under. They're comfortable. It's not too hot. It's not too cold. They're cool in these water temperatures. So hopefully that wasn't too long of an answer for crabbing and fishing, but that's the answer that I would give on the salinity and the water temperatures right now. It
was like 66 at the bottom of the tide today. So
beautiful. Beautiful. And you're not going to see them really start changing until you get to the mid to upper 70s consistently. So when you start getting 78, maybe degrees in the backwater, which will typically be around late July, August, unless you're fishing up in the flats, you're not going to have to look really deep for them. They're not going to push deep and hunker down to find that cooler water. They're going to be comfortable all the way up into that range. So there's not a lot to change. Now I said that I'm using Delaware, New Jersey, New York as a reference. You may be hitting that in North Carolina very quickly. You're already up around 70 in Virginia. So, keep in mind where you are, but the temperatures will remain consistent across the different areas, the temperature ranges. So once you get into the upper 70s to low 80s, that's where you might want to start looking deep. And it's warm enough that they don't have to go up and sun on the flats. They're not uncomfortable. So, right. but they're up there. They're up there right now. All right, Ed. So let's go your way and let's start talking. Well, unless you have another question you want to throw up there, I thought maybe we'd roll into a little tackle.
Yeah, we could do tackle. I'm good with that.
All right. So what are you typically using as your first bait or setup or rig or what? What's your first setup when you hit the water on any given day?
So my go-to right now is a 3/4 big head, fat dad, big head, white with a white tail, and it depends on the color, the clarity of the water. It depends on the clarity of the water. I had luck on white, gulp, 4-inch grub. I'm starting smaller baits because I don't think there's too much big stuff moving in the back right now. Right. Once we start getting the peanut bunkers and stuff like that, I'll upsize. So I've been using the 4-inch swimming mullets. I've been going between white and chartreuse. Today I was using a bougie chartreuse. I have like one of my signature colors. So it's a chartreuse with black fleck. I did really good on that last year. I'm waiting on another color. You had to order the pigment. So
okay,
I'm waiting on that. So that's where my starting is.
And you're a single hook guy.
Yeah, I don't fish top and bottom. Unfortunately, I don't subscribe to John Skinner. I think he's an amazing fisherman, but his technique doesn't work down here.
The top and bottom existed before Skinner, right?
Yeah,
I'm 50 years old this past week, and I can tell you I've always fished the top and bottom since I was little. My grandfather taught me how to tie a dropper loop with a bucktail on the bottom.
He made it popular. I mean, what can you?
He did. I wouldn't say he invented it though. He did make the gulp really popular. It's
like Band-Aids. Like you call them, like that's the name. You know what I mean? And it's also the trademark. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like when you think of Band-Aid, you think of piece of fabric you put over a cut. But there's the brand Band-Aid, and then there's bandages.
You're too young for this, Ed, but there was a time where there was a Jeep, and anything that was an SUV was called a Jeep because there was nothing. It never existed before. It was only a Jeep. That was the 4-wheel drive that you used, and then they came out with the SUVs, and they called a lot of them Jeeps until Jeep got mad.
So Skinner, you say Skinner rig, everybody knows what I'm talking about.
Yeah. He definitely made it the most popular. So I'll go through my rig. I am also using that bucktail right here. This one right here is a 1/2 ounce, but I'm using a white one typically to start. And what I've been using right now is it depends on the water clarity. So when it's a darker water, I'm actually going with the pink, and I'm using the pink with the white on the feathers, or not on the feathers, on the hair. And I'm using something like a pink shine if I'm using gulp, or I'm using like this. The Fred Mulligan is a really good size. It's a really good size paddle tail if you want to put that on there. But right now, it's really these jerk baits. These are working great for me. White specifically, white. So if you're using those for the white color, if you want to use just a non-gulp, then you'd use the Slam Shady Salt Strong. This is a bomber. This is actually bigger than I would use now. I'll use this more towards the middle of the summer. But make sure you put some scent on there. You want to appeal to as many senses as possible. That's what makes gulp so great. It's because it has the scent, and the scent is always on it. So make sure you do that. But I do use the top and bottom rig. So I do tie a dropper loop. So I use 20-pound Andy mono leader. I tie a loop knot onto the bucktail, and about 12 to 18 inches above that, I tie the dropper loop. And then I just use a regular, just a regular cheap teaser right here, which you can buy in any tackle shop for like $1.50. And I put that up top.
Mine are nicer.
Yours are nicer, but I know that you don't like making, so I don't ask you for them. But I will put on this something that's small, so a gulp swim mullet. And actually what I typically have been doing over the past year is I'm putting a mud minnow on there, or a killie. And I'm doing really well with that up top, and I'm getting a lot of action up there. The other thing to think about is shrimp patterns right now. So I have caught several flounder on shrimp, both on the power prawn from Salt Strong, again with Dr. Juice or Procure. I've used Procure on it as well, and both of those work really well. Or the gulp shrimp. The only problem I have with gulp shrimp is there's like zero action on that thing.
No, right? Especially as a bigger hook.
Yeah, it doesn't glide well. It doesn't do anything but stink like gulp, which is really good. But I found that the power prawn, you can actually work it. And in this case right now, where I'm tossing out and I'm working it back to a ledge and then down the ledge, I just like the additional action. So I've actually caught a couple on the power prawn, and I did catch one on. No, I haven't caught one, I don't think, on the gulp shrimp yet. Not that I recall. It's possible I have.
Have you ever seen the gulp that look like they're the size of gulp shrimp, but they have claws and stuff. They look like little crawfish.
Mantis shrimp.
No, they look like little crawfish. Have you ever seen those?
Yeah, they have a bunch of those. I think all of those will work. I think all of those, and actually those might work better.
Right, because the arms will flap around.
Right.
I don't know how tough they are, though. I have some. I've never tried them. I don't fish the top and bottom, so.
Well, pass them my way.
I'll give you some.
I'll fish them.
I'll trade you for some Freds. I'm out.
Okay, I'll give you some Freds. Yeah, they've been working well. But really, these jerkbaits have been working really well right now. Just keep in mind, if you guys are going to use these, they don't have the action that a paddle tail has. You have to impart the action into the lure a little bit more and work it. So make sure you do that. But that's my basic rig that I'm using right now. And I will mention one thing. If you want to switch it up, when I was dead in the water and just kind of floating, I was coming up on a nice weak fish spot. So I switched out to, and Ed, you know this, I always order from you a green bucktail.
Mm-hmm.
That's my weak fish bucktail. So I switched out to that. It works really well for fluke too. It's just not my favorite. I prefer the whites and pinks for fluke. And then I like the greens and pinks in that order for weak fish, and landed a really nice 25-inch, 4.6 pound weak fish on that.
Have you seen all the weakies that have been getting caught?
Yeah, there's some nice ones.
And some really nice ones this year.
I tell you what, I was extremely disappointed when I caught that. I honestly thought it was a short fluke. There was like no fight. It was the most anticlimactic thing. I was like, this one's no good. I think I said on the video, nah, it's short. It's no good. And then I pull it up and I just see this flash of rainbow. I was like, well, that's interesting. And it never took line. It just kind of like meandered right into the net. But then I couldn't revive it.
Jumping off that subject real fast, with your fluke, how has their bite been? The ones that you've caught, have they been aggressive?
No, I can't say 100% they haven't. I have had a few aggressive bites, but most of them are they pick it up and they glide. So you feel the very slight weight. So if you're not using something with a softer tip on that rod, I mean, I'm sure that you were missing some of these bites, because I mean, they're picking it up. I had one this past week where I was bringing it back in with the current, and I jerked it up and let it sink, and it never hit the bottom. And I was waiting and waiting. I'm like, okay, that only came up, I was jigging it maybe 5 inches off the bottom, and I jigged it maybe 2 feet up. So it should have hit the bottom by now. I know I didn't go over a hole. So I was like, all right, I got a fish. So I just slammed it, on the slack line, and luckily it came tight on it, but it's just it's not an aggressive bite. Is that what you're noticing? Yeah.
Well, if you noticed, you saw the video I posted, it was nothing. One little whack, and then I went to drop it back down to wait for the second one, and I started to pull it up, and I felt a little bit of weight on it. I'm like, you know what? Let it rip.
Slam it.
And it was there. So yeah, the other one I caught was probably like 15 or 16 inches. He was a little more aggressive, but the smaller fish usually are more aggressive. The bigger ones, I feel like they're just laying there and just swimming with it.
Oh yeah, I would agree with that. The smaller ones that I had were definitely the more aggressive. The larger ones, no, they didn't hit it really hard. The one that did, this is funny. I caught one dead sticking, which is really embarrassing. It was a nice one. I think it's 22 and a half. And I was putting together another rod, and as I'm tying on the bucktail and everything, it's in the rod holder next to me, and it hooked up, and it didn't look like an extremely aggressive bite. But I saw it biting it, and I just slammed it and brought it in. That actually took line, that one. So it got mad after I set that hook and it took off. But that was only in about 12 feet of water. So it was a really quick fight. But Yeah, it's not a super aggressive bite. It's not like you get in the summer,
No.
when it's really warm and they just kind of go after it. They're not as aggressive right now as they will be.
Mm-hmm.
Now, guys in the chat, if you're noticing something different, throw that in the chat, because this is just two guys that have fished mostly now different areas and separately, but of southern New Jersey at this point in the season. I mean, the season's only 2 weeks old, but it would be nice to see what other people are noticing out there as well. Our goal is that everybody hears some things that might help them to get on more fish and get more to the boat. So if you have something to share, put it in the chat. We'll try to bring it up into the conversation. And if not, everybody watching will see it scrolling by in the chat. So you're still helping them out. All right, let's go to another question. You have another question?
I feel fishy. How many beers does he need to drink to get over their favorite fluke spot, having so many changes over the winter that is not even a good spot anymore?
Yeah, it happens.
I'd say 7 to 10 beers.
I don't drink. I drink very, very occasionally. So I will say you don't need any I feel fishy, because that's just one of 1,000 spots. They've moved somewhere else, right? So just find the same structure somewhere else close by. You're going to find it. Quite often there's 5 spots within a 100-yard area. Now they're not big spots, but there's, 5, 6 spots that you can be fishing. So I feel your pain though. There are spots that I fished for my entire life that in the past 5 years have disappeared because they filled in or a sod bank fell. There was a creek I used to fish. Ever since I was a little kid, I'd row out there in a rowboat out towards near the inlet, and I would fish this spot, and it was weak fish, and it was flounder, and it was striped bass heaven when it came fall. And it's not there anymore. The creek's gone because the sod bank fell and went across the mouth of it, and there's no creek. The creek was just redirected, so it's just a little runoff.
How about Tommy O? With all the winds, would tying up to a marsh or putting down a stakeout pole be an option?
Yeah, so I have a couple things on my kayak right now, specifically because of the winds, and I have it for the summer. I have one of the marsh clips, so it's a brush grip or a brush grabber, and it's just a very big clip. You just squeeze the thing, and it's got these 4 teeth that you just put it right onto the marsh, and it literally holds you there. It's surprising, how much weight in a kayak can be held just by a couple of strands of marsh. Now, the marshes have to grow a little bit, or really early in the season, they're not long enough to do it. So I have that. I also have I think it's a 3-pound grapnel anchor that I throw over, and that is just to slow my drift. So I continue to drift, but that'll slow me down a lot. And then I also have a drift sock. So I have 3 things that are with me all the time. If you have a stakeout pole, absolutely. Just know that wherever you put that, you're going to be fishing, you got to be careful of which way you're going to be facing. And if you're in a kayak, be careful that you're not putting it off the side, because the last thing you want is a current hitting you broadside consistently. You want it off the front or off the back, just so it's a bit safer for you.
James Flynn, let's not ignore him tonight. What are we looking for when looking for these types of spots with the tides?
With these tides, so I guess he's talking about spring tides. Do you want to take that?
With the spring tide? I mean, spring tides are tough because you have such a large amount of water moving in your normal time span, so you're going to want to, start shallow. It's tough. I would say wind's more of a factor than the tides or than depth. You want to fish maybe a crosswind or something like that to where you can stay out of the wind and you're not moving with wind with tide. Well, your drift speed will be 8-9 miles an hour like it was today. So that would be my recommendation. What do you think, Rich?
So it's one of the problems. It's the blessing and the curse of spring tides. So new and full moon, more, as you said, more water cycling through in each tide cycle. So, it's a much stronger current, and that is great for fishing. But it doesn't mean that the same spots are great that you were catching on regular, neap tides when there's less flow during that time period. So a good spot during a neap tide is not necessarily a good spot during a spring tide. So there are absolutely 100% different spots. And a big part of that reason is the flounder are like any other ambush predator fish, really like any other fish. They don't go to Wawa. They don't go to Sheetz or whatever your local convenience store is to eat. If they're hungry, they have to catch it. So they have to expend calories to get calories. And if they're expending more calories than they're taking in, they're going to die. So they have to have a quote unquote easy meal. Well, when you have spring tides coming through an area, they don't want to be fighting that current because they're burning calories as they're trying to set up and catch a fish. So what you will often find is they're going to move just outside of that prevailing current. So where the current is the strongest, that may be the best spot you've ever fished. Every outgoing tide, at this time of year, great structure, you always catch good fish. Well, that's not necessarily going to be the case with the spring tide because there might be too much flow. So it might be too much for them to battle. So I look for a spot that is adjacent to, so it's still really good structure. It's going to put the bait in a consistent, predictable area, but it's not in the main flow because the flounder don't want to expend those extra calories. They want an easy meal. So they're going to move into the easier spots. And often what you'll find with flounder or fluke, if you start catching a ton of small ones, you're not in the right spot because the big ones, I think, tend to take over the best spots and then kind of relegate the smaller ones to the spots that they don't want to be in. So they're fighting those currents. They're out in the bad stuff. And then you're going to find a nice little eddy in a spot or a nice current seam next to some really nice structure. And that's where you're going to hit your 25-inch fish. So that's what I'm looking for during spring tides or any really strong tides. Look for the area that is just off the main current and you should be in good shape.
Bill D, how often do they hit the teaser?
Ed thinks 0.
I don't use one, so.
Yeah, I saw a comment in here. Somebody said...
I'll go with James's comment, 35%. There you go. That's my answer.
Yeah, I would say actually for me, it's closer to 50% if you take the entire year. And it's about 50% of the time for me. And it'll vary some trips. Last trip I didn't catch any on the teaser and I caught, maybe 20 fish total. And not one came on the teaser. But I have had trips where I've caught none on the bucktail and caught all on the teaser. So at the end of the day, I think it evens out to around 50%. If I had to say one was better than the other, the bottom hook will hook up slightly more, but my best estimate is 50%.
And I've noticed too, when I do it on occasion, use the top and bottom. It's usually smaller fish on the top and they fight. It feels like it's a much larger fish. I don't know if anybody else notices that, but I feel like when you catch one on the bottom, you can kind of tell like the size, but when it's on the top, you can't.
Feels bigger.
Yeah, it feels much larger than it is.
Yeah. I don't know if I've noticed that or not. I will say that I have caught, I think the biggest one that I caught in the backwater was on a teaser. I'd have to go back and check the video, but I think it was 25, 26, something like that. And that, I think it was on the teaser. That actually almost pulled the rod out of my hand. Yeah, I was not paying attention nearly as much as I should have been.
Here's another one from Justifiably Human. Getting a ton of flounder hits on the 3.5-inch paddle tail in Slam Shady, but they kept biting the tail off. So my recommendation would be let them eat it a little more.
Yeah. Man, are you sure it's a flounder hit? Because they really shouldn't be pulling the tails off very frequently. Now, if you miss several flounder in a row, absolutely they can tear a tail off. But if they're taking it on the first swipe, you might have something else messing with you at the same time. But yeah, letting them eat a little bit longer is probably going to be they're short striking you. So they're not fully committed. So what they'll typically do, and let's go back to Skinner, if you watch his videos, they'll come up behind and they'll kind of grab and they'll just kind of glide with it, but they haven't eaten it yet. And then they'll do one more big gulp. And that's when the entire bait goes into their mouth. And that's where you're going to set the hook. That's where you get the real heavy weight. Maybe you're just not at that point. It's just, it sounds like it's a tentative bite and they're just on the tail and you're setting it hard. So they have their mouth closed Actually, maybe that's why the tail's ripping off. You're setting the hook hard enough that it's just tearing the tail because they got it in their closed mouth. Yeah. So if you're sure it's a flounder bite, maybe that's the case.
Possibly. There's another one. Here's a good one from Nick Devereaux. Have you seen more pressure being put on the backwaters with earlier season and new regs from last year? My backwaters are like a parking lot. I have not. It's pretty regular for me. I don't know. I haven't noticed anything between this year and last year. I haven't noticed anything out of the norm.
It's a very New Jersey question. And for those that are not aware, be aware of New Jersey's regulations because it's coming to a state near you. And it is a slot. There is a 2-fish slot limit. And they give you a huge slot, though. That's the cool thing. Anything from 17 to under 18 inches is a slot fish. So you can catch 2 of those in that massively huge slot and then 1 over 18. And if you can't pick up on it, I think it's ridiculous to have a 1-inch slot. But yes, what that does do, I think there are a lot of people. I think there are a lot more people back there. However, I will say this. There are a lot of people out there on the water fishing in the wrong spots. So I haven't really been, being in a kayak, I can pretty well go wherever I want if my drive's working. And I haven't really been fishing near too many people very much. I've seen a lot of people. I see them all, there were, 15 boats piled in this one little sound, fishing this one little channel. Ed, you know where it is. We were there last year. Mm-hmm. And I could see them there and I'm thinking, nobody's going to catch a fish. And lo and behold, I look at the videos that came out from the people that were fishing over there and they didn't catch any fish because they're in the wrong area. So Nick, I know you know where to fish. I fished with Nick. I've been outfished by Nick. So, but yes, I have noticed that there are a lot more people putting in their boats earlier in the season. And, but they haven't really bothered me and I haven't bothered them and we haven't really crossed paths too often.
Ben, has anyone tried fluking with a weighted umbrella style rig? Thinking of it for all the action. I mean, for me, I probably wouldn't, but if you guys want to start doing that, I will definitely make umbrella rigs to sell you because you're going to be losing a bunch. Fluke are a bottom fish. I mean, very rarely are you going to find them up in the water column like you would a striper that, the umbrella rigs are good for. You're going to snag on a lot of stuff and it's going to be bringing in a lot of seaweed and a lot of trash. So I wouldn't recommend it, but if you want to try it, I'd be all for it.
I would say don't.
Listen, I got to make money somehow.
It doesn't mean you can't catch them, but Ben, I wouldn't do it. I have not tried it though, so what do I know? It could be the next best thing. It could make gulp look like child's play and I wouldn't know it because I haven't tried it and I probably won't try it until I see Ben out there catching fish next to me and I have to bum one off of him.
Listen, you guys start losing them, I'll start making them. I'll take your money every day.
I know you will. I know you will. Absolutely.
I think that's it for questions.
Yep. It's got a lot of private side conversations going on there, which is great. That's what we're all here for. So, yeah. So that's my approach. I'm using. I went through the rigs, went through the spots that I'm looking at. Water temperatures still look good, and that is a problem sometimes because really what you want is a water temperature that's going to make it more predictable. When 100% of the backwaters are comfortable to a fish, that's a problem. Because that means that you have to look at 100% of the backwaters and start narrowing down from there. If you can look at the backwaters and say the water is 80 degrees and they're getting a little uncomfortable, they want deeper areas, well, that cuts out 85% of the water right there, right? And we don't have that. So it can be challenging. It can be a challenging time of year to really figure them out. But I'll tell you, shallow right now is working. For me, the 5-inch jerk baits are working. On the bucktails, the teasers have not really been producing for me yet, but they should. And I'm still looking forward to a really good time if we can just find some weather that we can get a good drift without a lot of that snodgrass getting blown out of the marshes.
grass, and if they turn the fan off, we'll be all right.
Yeah, the wind has just been brutal. So yeah. All right. So everybody, thanks for tuning in. We're going to call it here. We're going to announce a little bit later in the week who the guest is for next week. But man, it's all about, I'm talking the entire coast. If you can find a time to get out there on the water this week, the fishing should be lights out, but you're going to have to find areas that are fishable. So in the winds like today, Ed, I know where you fished, and I know you couldn't have done this, but if you're going to do what Ed did today and go out in the wind, try to find areas that you have some wind protection so it's not beating you up all over the place, pushing you into marshes, pushing you in directions you don't want to go, pushing you at 2.5 miles per hour, which for fluke is too fast. When I'm drifting for fluke, I want to go just at or below the speed of the current, and I typically will never go over 1.4 miles per hour. So, and I find the sweet spot to be around 0.6 to 0.8. That's just me. That's inshore. That's what I do. And I have a lot of success, but you need to kind of manage those drifts. But man, the fishing should be getting really good right now. So man, people got to get out there. And I'll tell you what, the weak fish are there. The bluefish are there. The striped bass are there, all up and down the coast. And I'm talking all the way from Virginia, all the way up to Massachusetts. I'm seeing people catching some really nice striped bass. Mm-hmm. So man, there's a lot going on. Now I can't wait for my drive to come in. So I got to get out there. I got to get out there and get on some fish and get some videos. So again, everyone, thanks for tuning in. We'll be back next week, Monday night. Until next time, get out there, get on the water, and get some tight lines.
'Cause fishing, it's in my soul. It was pain.